So my team was the Buffalo Bills. My statement is short and sweet. This year, is it now or never for the Buffalo Bills? If they can't get it done this year, is that window maybe not closed, but is it closing?
I'm going to go quickly. So I'm going to take a decent sip. And the reason here is I think Josh Allen's window is not now or never. He is too young of a quarterback and it's too long of a tenure. But the iteration of Sean McDermott and Josh Allen, I think, could be gone. And I think that if you're bringing in a new coach here within the next couple year or two, I think that brings a whole new iteration of the same team, even though it's the same thing, kind of. So I would say that I'll say an exaggerated sip.
Interesting.
If that makes sense kind of to your thing. So I think they have the chance to win moving forward, but it's now or never with Sean McDermott. But it's not now or never for Josh Allen, which means it's not now or never for the Bills.
That's interesting. That's it. I want to ask you back then on that before we get to Brandon or Tim. Do you think McDermott's? Do you think within a year or two he could be fired? Because I would find it hard to believe they could just replace someone better than McDermott.
Yeah, I agree. I think McDermott's a very good coach, but I also think at the same time that if you are doing the same thing every single year, at some point something's got to change and you're not getting rid of Josh Allen. If every year, I understand that it's the Chiefs and they have been the gold standard, but if you can't beat them in the game that matters ever, at some point we can't just keep doing the same thing. And I think at some point the organization's going to say okay, we need to try something different.
I would say counterpoint though. I don't know if McDermott's the reason they're losing these games. Bengals game 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I'd agree with you. But you can't put McDermott on a missed field goal. You can't put McDermott on
you can't
the chain gang not measuring the spot last year.
You can't, but someone's got to take the fall for it at some point. And that's why you don't fire him after last year specifically. But if they go to the playoffs again and then say this year they lose to Lamar, and then you're okay, so for the last 6 years we have lost to Patrick Mahomes 4 times, Joe Burrow once, and Lamar Jackson's once. And none of those quarterbacks are going anywhere in the playoffs. Or they're going anywhere in the conference, and we're going to have to see them for another half decade to decade, depending on how long they play and how high of a level they are. At some point, it's we gave this a nice 6 years. We even revamped the offense. We've changed offensive coordinators. We've changed a lot of stuff here, but at some point, I think the coach has got to be there. But I don't think you need to hold him accountable because you're right. A Tyler Bass missed field goal can't be just that, but at the same time, there are things to point out throughout the tenure. So
that's fair enough.
I just think at some point you got to move on.
I actually don't think it's weird with McDermott. I don't think he's elite. I think he's very good, but I think I remember when I looked 2 years ago, he had the same exact record as Sean McVay. So he probably has a better record than Sean McVay now after these last 2 seasons. You better have a damn good reason to fire him if this keeps going. I mean, I'll let Tim and Brandon expound because I agree. I have more thoughts, but
I agree. But I just think at some point, 7, 8, 9 years of just continuously losing and losing and losing in the playoffs to the same guys, I just think at some point you're moving on from Josh, you're moving on from Sean, and you're not moving on from Josh.
Do you feel that same way about Pittsburgh and Baltimore?
Yes, more so Pittsburgh than Baltimore, but yeah, I feel
like Baltimore and Buffalo are the exact same situation. I wouldn't move off of Sean any faster than I would move off of Harbaugh.
But I think at some point, with Buffalo, it's been a little different than Baltimore. Baltimore, I mean, you could even argue it almost more in that sense because Baltimore hasn't played up to standard in the games when it's mattered. So, obviously, last year was a little different. Last year was a little different because, obviously, there was the Mark Andrews play. They did play a good game against the Bills. They just happened to lose. But, you go to the Chiefs game the year before that, they didn't play it up to standard.
They should.
You go to the Titans game when they were the 1 seed. They didn't play up to standard. You go to the playoffs after that when they played. Oh, I'm forgetting who they played. But they didn't have Lamar that year, but they played the Bengals. And obviously, I mean, you can't say they didn't play up to standard. They lost, but like they played the Bengals. Like then, so it's just like they haven't really at their pinnacle played up to standard. So then it's even more like we've got to get something. But obviously, they've continued to make changes. Okay, so like first time Lamar's young, then we're bringing after the Chiefs game, we got to go get a running back. We got to get Derrick Henry, and so they kept changing things. And if you continue to lose, then I think you have to look at John Harbaugh, even though like he's such a really good coach. It's just at some point you've got to decide, are we going to continue to do the same thing over and over and over again? Or are we just hoping that's going to be a different outcome? Or are we going to change something? And the change would be Lamar or John, Josh or Sean.
I know.
And like,
I know I gave my statement and we haven't really got to the nitty gritty of it, but I do kind of want to stay here because we were having this conversation in the group chat to break the fourth wall the other day. Like we somehow got in this Shane Steichen conversation with the Indianapolis Colts. I'm of the mindset like that, and I think this goes for a lot of NFL franchises where they give up on a guy too quick. I think if you at bare minimum, like Dayball a couple years ago, right, with Daniel Jones, got the most out of Daniel Jones. Yes, it was an easy schedule, but he got him to the playoffs. That means something to me compared to, like Brian Callahan. We talked about him. Don't know what he actually is as a coach, right? Yeah. Whereas Dayball, I can actually give you an answer from at least 1 year, right? That's kind of how I feel. Tim kind of said it. Like with McDermott, I feel like you earn your keep after winning that much. If you're winning 11, 12, 13 games, even if you have your warts, which I almost think McDermott's like, he's so regular, he almost doesn't show off his warts enough. Like he has some game management issues, but not really like doesn't hurt you that much, right? So
the defense has been like he's a defensive guy, but the defense has been kind of what's lost him games in the playoffs, and the
defense is going to be trouble this year too. That's
kind of where it gets to because like every year it seems like the Bills during the regular season are like one of the top fantasy defenses. They have a top 10 defense scoring wise. And then in the playoffs, you go through all their losses and Josh's losses. It's been 27 points or more in like every loss of his. And like, that's super tough to overcome. Like if you were just to remove like the record and look at Josh is one of like the 5 or 6 best postseason quarterbacks, like of all time, honestly. In 13 games, he's 25 touchdowns to 4 picks, and like over 100, like 3 passer rating. Like he's been phenomenal. He's just ran into the best quarterback of his generation in Patrick Mahomes multiple times, and in very close games where he's played up to snuff with Mahomes.
And it's bad luck, honestly.
And like up to snuff, and then bad luck.
Seconds,
he made
this kick, chain gang. That's just bad luck.
No, it is just bad luck, and it's like. It's unfortunate. And then the first one, they were up 10-0, and then that Chiefs team was just better than that Bills team in the first one they played. But like that's the thing. When like at some point though, you have to point to something. Why are we continuing to lose? And you would lean to we have a defensive coach, and every year, even when the Chiefs offense has been what we think is not great, they're still putting up 27 or more. And it's like at some point. We've got to change it. But I don't think you should have like fired him after year 2 of that. Like after the 13-second, be like, we can't do it with him. But like 7 years down the line of like 5 years down the line of that, you're like, okay, we can, I guess, have to try to move on to something.
Compelling case. Case.
I never got to respond to the take. So I will say that the Super Bowl window is not closing. It is not closed. I'm as confident as I've been in the Bills in the last few years to make a Super Bowl and potentially win one. So I think they're in a good spot. They'll still be in a good spot. When you ask somebody like me if I would like rather be in the Bills situation where we fail every time or be in the last 15 years the Giants situation, I'm taking the Bills every single time. So I think they're in a fine spot.
Super Bowls included or not included?
In the last 15 years, they only have the one. Yeah, you're right. So I'll say the last 13 years there. That'll make it easier for you.
Fair. Yeah. So I was just curious because like, obviously that is an interesting question. Obviously you have the one Super Bowl, but you've been like mediocre ever since.
Mediocre. We've been dog shit.
You've had a couple playoff. I mean, you have to think you did go to the playoff with Dayball, and then you did have the Odell boat trip, which was the biggest thing in the world.
So we've had 2 disasters.
So you've had like weird playoff things. Obviously, It's interesting. Like, is that one Super Bowl overshadow the entire Josh Allen like era of like we continuously get to the playoffs deep and like it's an interesting conversation we could have another time. But Brandon, this year, now or never for the Buffalo Bills.
I'm going to the bathroom. I need a bathroom break on this. I don't think so. I think they've done a good job of kind of tweaking the offense. I think if this year's not the year, I think next year is when you really go all in. I would honestly take a little bit of a couple of pages out of Les Snead's playbook. Trade your draft capital, go get a bona fide wide receiver one. I feel like it would work out different if you did that because you have more complementary pieces at receiver, tight end, stuff like that. Whereas it's not just Stephon Diggs. James Cook's there long term. Obviously, Josh Allen is like Keon Coleman can be something. Like I foresee that window being open for years after this, even if Sean McDermott gets fired. But I don't really think they'd go that far. I think it would be something as simple as going out and getting a real difference maker receiver and then going and getting like an actual true like number one. And I think those two things would get you there.
Yep. So I'm in lockstep with you guys when it talks about the Bills like actual window. I'm the SIP because obviously if we're talking just the pairing of McDermott and Allen, I think there's a chance that could be broken up within the next couple of years, depending. So this year kind of is a very important one, especially if for some reason this year they went like 10-7 and got bounced in the first round. Like I think then you start to like wind the clock. Like, well, what are we doing here? Like we're now just kind of moving backwards. But Kyle, you give your record on the Bills and talk about them a little bit, and then we'll kind of go from there. I like this conversation.
Sure. Yeah. No, I'm going to take a sip of my own statement, but with valid reasons. Okay. We just mentioned what we think of the Pats, and I think we all said like what we think of the Pats moving forward too, right? Yep. So like that's going to be a challenge. We haven't seen anything of Aaron Glenn yet, but I'm of the belief that he'll at least be like fundamentally sound for the Jets. Yeah. Like I already have an idea of what they're going to look like with Justin Fields at the QB, with that defense. We know they're going to run the ball. So like they could be a tough out this year, right? And possibly moving forward, depending on who the quarterback is. Miami, we just don't know, right? They could be competitive this year if Tua's healthy. So that could give you problems if you're Josh Allen and the Bills. Honestly, though, my main reason for this, aside from all that, they're getting a dome next year. You play in Western New York where you have a built-in advantage with this weather that the Pats will have, that the Jets will have if they're ever competitive, that Miami has early on in the season when they're playing in September, October.
And late in the season when you have to go from New England in the cold to go down to Miami and it's hot too. Sure. Like a little one. Sure. But yeah.
Sure. And I don't know. I mean, the Bills have probably a top 5, top 3 home field advantage right now. I can't imagine that stays when you go to a dome. That's honestly one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. You have a gift there with those December, January games, especially in the playoffs. And then imagine we get an AFC championship game when it's a dome team, right? When it's the Bills in a dome and it's Lamar coming to you or it's Mahomes coming to you. Like whatever advantage you had, it's no longer there.
What if it's the Dolphins coming to you? Like that's been the biggest thing with, you know, I'm just like, just for hypothetical, like think of the first round matchups that's been Dolphins built, like in a dome that changes the entire complexion when last year when they're like, oh, we got to postpone a game or 2 years ago because it's snowing too much. Like it's hard to play in the snow. It's why Tom Brady's so great because he can play in every air, like and all of that. And Mahomes is great because he can do that. Lamar can do that. Burrow can do that. That's why they're all great. But like, it's tough when you have that quarterback from down south that has to go up there. CJ Stroud CJ Stroud played at Ohio State, but CJ Stroud having to go up there used to Texas is kind of makes it a little different.
Yeah, no, across the history of football, there's real stats that say like if you're a West Coast quarterback or a warm weather QB, dome QB, and you go to New England, Buffalo, Green Bay, your stats are going to dip. And you're taking one of the most atrocious places in the United States weather-wise in December and January and saying, all right, we're going to give an advantage to literally every quarterback in the league, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think there's something to that. It worries me. Again, I think it's one of the stupidest things I've ever heard a franchise make. I don't like it's ridiculous. That being said, go ahead.
if Green Bay just got a dome.
Right?
Like, that wouldn't happen. Like, the whole city would burn the place to the ground right as it finishes building. So
straight up.
Or if New England got a dome, Kyle, really? Like, really?
Here's my counter argument to that. I have a quick little counter argument to a dome. Okay,
let's hear it.
Of course, the Jacksonville boy would want the dome. Of course.
Okay.
The Florida boy is like, I can't deal with the cold. Are you kidding me?
Okay, so hear me out on this. Okay, obviously Detroit plays in a dome.
Yeah.
Here's a couple of key points here. I think with the dome, I think it actually gets a little bit louder because all of that sound's enclosed in, and basically it's just ricocheting back and forth. So I think it'll be louder than what it normally would be. True. And here's the thing too, like we can sit here and talk about, these Southern quarterbacks or these West Coast quarterbacks. Like I understand Buffalo is like built to play in snow, but imagine if Buffalo didn't have to play in snow. Like, I think that's also what we're not taking into consideration here is like, how much better could Buffalo be if they're not playing in a foot or 2 feet of snow and they can't see, or Josh Allen can't drop back and throw the ball 30, 40 times. Like, I understand that argument, but I feel like that's a valid counter argument too, because like, as good as Buffalo is in the snow, like, they could be even better. And then the home field advantage is going to be amplified even more because that place is going to be rocking. It's going to be closed in. Like, that sound's got nowhere to travel. So, I mean, you could be looking at like a 12th man kind of thing like that. I mean, the Superdome in New Orleans is loud.
One of the loudest.
One of the loudest stadiums I've ever been inside. The Mercedes-Benz Dome in Atlanta is probably the loudest, or probably a top 3 loudest stadium that I've been in. So, like, I get that, but I also think that also benefits Buffalo too.
I just remember the Buffalo San Francisco game last year where Buffalo was just outclassing them because it was a snow fest. And that's exactly what they're prepared for. So I would lean towards Buffalo getting more of an advantage out of the snow than less of an evening out or just playing better all throughout the season.
And it's going to be interesting because obviously Josh Allen's just like entering his prime and should probably stay in his prime for another half decade to however long. It'll be really interesting to see how they orchestrate the roster around him because like right now they're built for November, December, January in a dome and outside. So like they don't really have like speed on their roster. They have a lot of physicality and power. So it's going to be interesting to see if they try to combat that by like, if they have a dome and be like, let's try to race to get this into, so we can maybe get some more speed for us. So like we can go on the road if need be. We can be kind of like how Detroit was like, let's get the 1 seed so we can, Jameson Williams can get going. We can get all these guys going. So it's interesting. I think also too, that could have also hurt them a little bit last year. You got Jaden Daniels in a dome and let him cook instead of being in Washington. So. It's interesting. We'll see how it goes.
Very last thing I want to say, it'll be an interesting case study to see like if it changes at all. Like when Buffalo goes to a cold weather city now, will it change now that they're a dome team next year moving forward? Just real quick, Buffalo or Josh Allen, I forget which one, that 8 turnovers. I think it was Josh Allen, 8 turnovers total last year. So I can't imagine that holds up. If it does, sure. But if that number goes up, maybe you lose some more games. That being said, this has got to be one of the most favorable schedules I've ever seen. Any game of consequence, the Bills have at home. Again, last season in this stadium. That's kind of why I have it now or never. Y'all remember last year I was huge on the Ravens. Like I just felt it in my bones that the Ravens were going to win the Super Bowl or at least be in the Super Bowl. That's kind of how I feel about the Bills. I'm not giving anything away there, but like I just can't imagine the Bills not being in at least the AFC Championship game this year. It would be hard for me not to see that. And
you're right, Kyle. Like I had gone through the schedule and I remember when they played. Ravens at home,
any
Chiefs
single game
at home, Bucks at home, Bengals at home, Eagles at home.
I'll say this too, Keenan.
Coming too.
I got it 13-4. I think they lose week 1, and we'll do this, when we do our predictions 2 weeks from now. When we go through the schedule. I think they lose week 1 to the Ravens on like a revenge game type shit. You could feasibly tell me they go 15-1 after that. I'd believe it. You could tell me they only lose 2 games after that. I'd believe it. Like I think they could go off this year. And I know I just said the thing with the turnovers, but even if that 8 goes to 12 or if 15, that schedule is so favorable for them as far as home games, as far as weather, everything. I don't know. It could be a special season for Josh and the Bills for sure.
Yeah, and they get to play like the Chiefs coming off a game at Carolina, so like not a physical game coming off of that. So like there's just like a lot of little things to this schedule, and like when would you want to see the Ravens? The beginning of the season when everybody's as healthy as can
Right.
be, like
Yeah, week
at
1 or week
home.
12 when you want to see them. Right?
Yeah, like you want to see the Ravens as early as possible, or in a situation where like they're coming off maybe a tough game, like so. Yeah, no, it's interesting. Timmy, you go, then Brandon, and I'll close it off.
I think the team's going to be very good this year. I think similar to the last few years, they're going to win a lot of these games against tough teams, especially with them being at home. I don't know how that's going to hold up in the playoffs, but I have them at 14-3. Very good team. But I think their losses will come against some of these juggernauts like Baltimore. Yeah.
Yep.
So I am also in agreement with Tim on this. I have them at 14-3. I love the supporting cast this year that Josh Allen has. I think it's probably one of the deepest that Buffalo's ever had. I understand they don't have a top tier guy like Stephon Diggs, but they can legit go 5-6 deep at receiver. They've got 3 running backs that all can play, that all offer you different skill sets. I love their tight ends, love the offensive line. I think the defense is going to be better too.
Joey Bosa.
Yeah, Joey Bosa, like in place of Von Miller. Von Miller really didn't do too much. I think the biggest thing is going to be health of the defense. I feel like the last 2 years, the defense really hasn't been super healthy when it's mattered the most. Hopefully they get some good injury luck this year. Yeah, I have them at 14-3. I really do think that that this probably is the best roster they've had to make a Super Bowl.
It's up there, and hopefully they can get a whole full season of Matt Milano. He's played 4 and 5 games last 2 years. Matt Milano would be a massive piece,
welcome addition.
And Terrell Bernard too didn't play last year either.
No, like that. Like obviously, it was well publicized that the Lions had like a bunch of injuries, and obviously, like so, like they had a bunch of injuries. But the Bills, low key, are like a mini Lions. It almost feels like every year, like they always are missing like a couple people, whether it's Tre'Davious White being out or coming in Milano, as we talked about. Like there's just always seems to be a couple key Bills that seem to miss time towards the mid-season, and then you don't think about it, and that's also part of the reason what contributes to their defense not being as good, even though you do see them still overcome it in the regular season, which you kind of see in there. But so Kyle has them 13-4, Brandon has them 14-3, Timmy has them 14-3. I have them 4-13. I'm just kidding. I have them 13-4.
What? What did he say?
I just talked completely about how I think this team's going to be really good, and then just 4-13, worst team in the division. No, I think they're 13-4. I think they beat up on, because the one thing the Bills do is they might give you a game every now and again, but for the most part, when it comes to these, like, I'm going to call them cupcake kind of teams, they don't just win, they blow them out. Like, and they that's the thing. Like, sometimes the Ravens will kind of play around with their food a little bit, and like will let a Raiders team kind of stick with them for the game, and they're like in close games. Typically with the Bills, it's like, yeah, we're gonna just get this team up out of here real quick. Like, we're just gonna get this team out of here. Josh is gonna have a field day, and I see that happening a decent amount this year. And then in the big games, they're prepared for them all. So I got the Bills 13-4. I think everybody in this is in lockstep that they are one of the probably 5 favorites for Super Bowls to get to the Super Bowl. We'll just say 5, just so it's not like a definitive kind of thing. I think we're one of the 5. But these other 2 teams here, I think are the 2 least interesting-ish teams. We'll go with another.
I disagree.